There we go. Okay, so let's begin by introducing ourselves for everybody. I am Nate Bizzaio. I am the program chair and I work at the BCIL office in Burlington. Vanessa, you are next.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Vanessa Santos, Eugenio, she, her pronouns, and I work in the City of Burlington Human Resources Department.
Laura.
I'll go. Then maybe the other Laura, I don't know. So Laura Wheelock, I'm with Public Works.
Sophie.
I'm Sophie Sauvé. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm with Burlington Parks.
Allie.
Hi, I'm Allie Fuddy. I currently work at the Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, and I'm a Burlington resident with a visual impairment.
Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott Barker, CIO for the City of Burlington.
Laura.
Hello. Hello. My name's Laura Siegel. I'm Director of Deaf, Hard of Hearing, and Deaf Blind Services under the Department of DAIL. Aging and Independent Living.
And Ethan.
Hi, I'm Ethan Fellows. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator at CEDO.
Thank you. So as we mentioned, here's a look at the agenda. So we did introductions, public forum. I don't see anyone from the public on here. If anybody wants to talk on behalf of the public, they can. If not, we can just move to news and updates. I don't know if anybody from the local programs have any updates that you would like to provide us with. If so, Sophie, I see you waving your head. Sophie always has good updates. You're muted.
Just a quick update on the Oakridge Universally Accessible Playground. The contractor started back up last Monday, and they're in earnest. Maybe not now because it's pouring outside, but they're hoping to wrap up their portion in the next few weeks. But then we'll wait on the family slide installation before the port in place, which is the playground surfacing, to come in, and then we'll have a better sense of when we'll open the playground to everyone. But we're excited that the weather was great last week to get started, and we're looking forward to a big party. So make sure you have your calendars open sometime in early summer.
Definitely. Okay, anybody else have any news or updates they want to provide? I guess the only update I want to give you from a BCIL standpoint is this Wednesday. There is an online Disability Awareness Day event. It's online through Zoom. I think I sent people the link. It is at the delightful time of 5 to 6:30 p.m., which I'm sure people are just clamoring to go to, big things like this. But if anybody is interested, please sign up. There should be some good topics being discussed. I know both myself and I always forget her name, Deb are speaking. Are going to be giving short presentations there. So yeah, just letting you know that. So that was really the news and the updates things. I made this agenda. If people want to follow it, this is just what I got, picking parts from the last meeting. I did want to just touch into at the last. We keep on talking about how we want to use the committee funds, especially for either getting out outreach, either like posting things with information about how to be accessible, or making minor upgrades or changes to buildings and facilities that would that might be able to be done. I think sometimes we talk about maybe installing adult changing tables or something like that in some of the places, or having our committee contribute to the installation of the I never pronounce it right. Is it the tactile signs, or putting up, and again, I don't even know, and this is something where maybe Laura can provide feedback, or maybe providing little things that we could put on parking area meters to say that people who have accessible placards don't need to pay for parking. Something like that. So these are some ideas that were thrown out. We're now at April, so I do think and we can make a plan to get it. So I guess the question is, what ideas do we like? How much can we spend? And how do we go about doing that? So I don't know if people have any ideas. I did see Laura also wrote Vermont is BBH Day. I don't know what that is. April 29th, Saturday, Vermont Technical College. Randolph, 9 a.m. at 3 p.m., 17 vendors. DOH. Laura, can you tell us what the acronym means? Vermont Deaf Blind. Deaf Blind. Are you hearing that?
Yes, you got it.
Yeah.
It's the second annual event of this kind. We did it last year and about 75 people went, it's open to anyone deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind, hearing people. There will be interpreters available for those who do not use sign. It's a way to get an introduction to various resources towards people who do work with people deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind across the community. It's also a great place for community members to come together. And it's fun.
So I'm going to stop the share here. So, so back to use of community funds. I'm actually more into the how. I'm more giving. I'm not a state person, and how and like what we might need to do. So it's like the what and the how is really what the questions are that I have, and how we want to go about doing that. So I certainly open the floor to suggestions. These are some of the items that we had discussed. So please feel free to provide any ideas. Vanessa, what were you muted or unmuted? I thought I saw you on. Don't all shout out at once.
This is Allie. I know I'm always beating the voting drum, but I'll just go back to it continually. I'm curious if there's some, and maybe this is a bigger issue, just that this did partner with the city of Burlington around, but I'm wondering if there's some way to use these funds, like in our very small capacity and what we might be able to complete within the context of what our capacity is, like a space or a way to get folks together who identify as a person with a disability, who are Burlington residents, to either hear, there's a few different things that are on my mind, but hear about the barriers they might have faced in voting and what kind of supports would need to be in place to increase the access to voting for individuals with disabilities in Burlington, or just a place also potentially for people to get information about the different issues that are being discussed within the city, where an interpreters could be available, like sign language interpreters, where maybe Braille materials like Braille versions of the text could be available. That's just a thought that I've kind of had kicking back around my mind, and it's very vague, but I'm just throwing it out there since we're having this conversation.
That's actually really good, Allie. I think, and people, can chime in here and think if they have a different idea. I kind of see that initial plan falling under the ideas of having like a town hall or kind of like a meeting. We kind of did some trainings and talked about doing some trainings, but I do think having a meeting sometime and maybe doing it a little closer to voting. I mean, I mean, in like September. I don't want to do too close to November, but maybe having something where we have a town hall meeting date where people, express their concerns, and then we have somebody who is, ADA certified coming to talk about, what their options are, who they can contact, and do those things. So I see that as a potential, when we talk about potential training things, we're talking about ADA 101, but if you really want to get really specific, we could do something like that with the voting issue. Because, I've done ADA 101 trainings till my head spins, but it's really kind of figuring out, everybody understands that, but it's really understand what are the specific issues that people are dealing with that we want to go over. And I see that as a good opportunity. So I don't know if I don't think that would be something that would require much budgetary. I know we said that we can get the space because we're part of the committee, maybe in Burlington, somewhere in Burlington City Hall, and then just invite people for live sessions and then Zoom it. And then it's more about who do we want to invite both as talkers? Do we want a panel? Do we want people who are in charge of the voting, to be there to answer questions? I mean, I'm sure I can help provide people who are trained from the ADA sense um, of voting and stuff like that. But I would also want like people from the city to be there to kind of hear the concerns.
Yeah, and I think that would be great. And also, like, I think another piece of that, and maybe it's a separate thing, and would just be the like, I think there's real barriers to actually getting the information. Like, if you're a person with a disability who would like to vote, like, do we have things, for example, like, are there, sign language interpreted ways of accessing, let's say, the content that is going to be voted upon? Is there Braille version so that you can review ahead of time? Large print versions is there, language that's written accessibly for somebody who might need something at, multiple different reading levels? Like, those are the kind of things that I don't know if those questions really get asked. And maybe just the starting place is like not making any assumptions about what people need and just having the conversation about like, what are the barriers that you face?
So timing wise, I think I would suggest, if this is what we move towards, is to target August. Inside of the city's cycle for voting, the city council hears final language usually at their last meeting in September, and that's where the ballot language is finalized. After which point we begin printing a lot of materials, it's better to have that information ahead of that production timeframe than it is to get it later in the cycle.
Okay, so we should aim for an August training in terms of putting that together. Anybody have any like, of course I can put together and asking, some of people from my avenue, to help give the training on how the ADA relates to voting and some of that. Anybody have any suggestions on who from the city we would invite to kind of listen into this? On where it'd be most relevant for the where the feedback might be getting heard, or where maybe to answer some questions about that.
The voting happens in the CT office, so Catherine, who wasn't able to make today's meeting, would be able to identify which of the CT staff.
Okay.
But she's the right person to answer that question.
Okay. And in terms of, that's interesting for voting. Provide, maybe Laura can provide feedback. For Laura, for voting, going into vote and requesting interpreters for voting, for sign language interpreters, is that covered under the ADA to come in and vote, and needing ASL interpreters? Would that be something the city would be responsible for?
Well, keep in mind ADA Titles 2 and 3, that allows people to put in a request, but the problem is, where does that request go to? I know of a couple of contacts under the Secretary of State. I've asked them to address this, and the only thing they always suggest is they'll let me write up a document. I think I shared that document with folks before. It was available through the Secretary of State's website page, but I could share the two contacts, Lori and Will, with you. The two of them, Allie, I would suggest that you email those two folks about any of people's personal frustrations with the voting, and then CC to me, and hopefully they will come up with some solutions. I'm still trying to figure out how to make voting accessible for deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf blind. I mean, it's still trying to figure out how to make improvements in a way that's, appropriate for all the volunteers. It's all run by volunteers, right? So that makes it a little bit cumbersome. And how do we standardize staff people who are always being replaced? Why is there no consistency? That's part of the problem. But let me email those two names to Allie, and then you can see what you might want to do with it from there, if that's
Well,
all right.
Laura, do you think it might be worthwhile if we have, we're starting to get into, I think this is a really complication issue, because we're talking about what does municipality do and what does the state do regarding this issue. But do you think inviting some of these people to attend this
Yes,
training would be a good idea?
I would think it's really, there's nothing to lose by inviting them.
Okay.
I think it's
if you
definitely
could-
worth it.
Yeah. If
I
you could
can put
include me in
stuff in
an
the
email,
chat.
that'd be great. Yeah.
Okay, it's there.
Okay. And I do think we have discussed in terms of making reasonable accommodations. I think when we were talking about, or either a intake form or something where either people find complaints. That was something about doing something for the website, to the Burlington website, to try to create something where people could go to for that. And again, I don't know if that would mean making a reasonable. I don't know if it would be a portal or making reasonable accommodations, even for voting, would be someplace for that. So if you send it to, if you have a reasonable accommodations request on the website and it goes to it, I think it would go to the ADA coordinator who could chime in, which I guess that's Catherine. Would she then be the one to reach out to voting and say, we want to make this, we need interpreters. And then I guess the other question is, we talk about uses of the funds that we have. Is that something where the election would be in, or maybe we can offer to use some Burlington Accessibility Committee funds for interpreters? I'm hesitant to do it for a lot of things, only because it almost seems like different departments should be providing interpreters. And so I don't want us to be seen as a universal source. Maybe it's a good idea, but that might be something for during election cycles to see if we could use our funds to provide interpreters. Don't know what people's thoughts on that are.
I generally feel, and I can't speak for every city meeting, but if we're having specialized meetings, the city does print agendas with a disclaimer, please reach out if you need some sort of special accommodation, entrance to a room, interpretation, both sign language or other. it feels a little bit like a minimal effort. Generally, a project budget would accommodate that, or a special meetings budget would accommodate it. There is probably a broad stroke of our community that have just tuned us out because it's not automatically provided. And so they're not listening to any of the active conversations. So that might be where kind of a one-time direction to really make more city meetings or outreach be more accessible to the groups that we really are just kind of broadly communicating with and not specifically. To let them know that they can be heard on a more routine basis and be made, to be part of our conversations.
But to your point, that's something that we always encourage, and it's, when having a meeting, to kind of it sounds like you already do that, if you need special accommodations, I don't know if you need a time frame. I mean, it's especially important with interpreters where, please get back to us by this date so we can get it through. I guess the question is, if the person makes a request, is the person receiving the request have the information they need to put that together? I guess it's just a lot of loose ends to tie together.
It is. I will say, because it goes pretty broadly across the city, we're really good at supporting each other, but you're going to find, if you asked me about a specific service that needs to be provided for a meeting, I won't know on the spot, but I know who to ask that question to help me get to the right answer.
This
So
is
what?
this,
Yep.
this is sort of
Ally, go
sad
on.
that I don't. Oh, sorry. This is sort of sad. I don't know the answer to this question as a Burlington resident. But does the city of Burlington have an ADA coordinator?
Well, I think technically it's Catherine. And
It's
so Catherine,
technically
I think what we're-
Catherine. Okay.
Yeah, but I do think we need to work together. So the idea, the point is, but I think we need to have ideas of change because right now Catherine is listed on the HR side, and I think we need to make it. The idea would be to get it on this advisory committee and have Catherine be the coordinator, and then some of the items that she does, she can either deal directly or it would be brought upon this group to discuss and provide details. But I do think we need to do a better job, and it is required by the ADA of making sure people know who our ADA coordinator is. And it also entails quite a bit of knowledge of the ADA and stuff like that. And I don't know what Catherine, I know when I was going back and forth with Catherine, she was asking, is this something we can work in conjunction with? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. I follow the model that was the Barry ADA committee, and they do that. They have somebody who is an ADA coordinator. Somebody brings some issues to it. It's kind of discussed, but then they come to this committee and then discuss those issues, and we work on ways to do it. So that's the way I kind of see it becoming. It's more about making sure that information is available, for people to know who to contact about that.
Just a point of nuance to add here. So from a human resources perspective, Karen Durfee and the HR team are listed specifically for employee-facing concerns, but generally, right, citywide, and that includes residents, that's going to be Catherine. In other agencies of like sizes, there usually is an ADA coordinator to tend to some of these higher level and really nuanced questions. So in a dream world, if there is budget, if there's agreement, it'd be really nice to have a role like that, because I think we could be in a better place of problem solving and tending to things pretty quickly. But I know that currently that doesn't exist, and I haven't heard of any conversations of that role being established.
This is where it really be helpful to bring in Amber. Amber has missed a couple of meetings, but Amber plays that exact role for the
University of Vermont.
For the University of Vermont, and that's in an ideal world, you would have somebody who is trained in ADA coordination to be a coordinator who goes to the trainings and do that to kind of serve that the ADA coordinator. Again, there's always budgetary issues that kind of gets, but I do think that I can't remember the exact numbers, but I think all municipalities with more than, I want to say 50 employees are required to have an ADA coordinator. I don't know that exact number, but it is something that needs to be made available. And that was something from the onset of the ADA, and we're 33 years later, and it's just one of those other things where it's been really slow burn to take place. So I think that's one of the responsibilities of this committee is trying to make sure that information becomes available.
I'm
Yeah,
also
and
gonna,
that's good to, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm gonna add to the chat, because there was a question about, well, where does this information live? How does the public find out who the ADA coordinator is? So as a result of that dialogue, there was a new page created, but it lives on the Human Resources website just because I have control over that page. And so that's where the information currently lives. But I do think if this committee does establish, right, a page that is about accessibility, it does seem to be appropriate to have that contact information there listed. I don't think it's as obvious to the public to have it here.
Yeah. Yeah. So Allie, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Oh, no, I just was going to say, I mean, as a Burlington resident, that's just a good thing also for, you know, not only just my role on this committee, but also like, those are the kind of conversations I want to be having with my city council person or people around like, hey, this would be something, you know, to continue to consider about and push for and ask for in the budget. Because I think those are the places I think where change really does actually happen.
Yeah, circling back to what you were saying earlier, Nate, about providing interpreters and what Laura was saying about city department accommodations. That's something we are trying to take into account with the language access policy that we're rolling out here at CEDO. Yeah, we try and accommodate ASL interpreter requests as well. Right now, the basis we're operating on is we have some material out there like the interpreter posters, and we try and when we do events, we try and put out material that says, hey, if you need language access services, which includes ASL interpretation, please reach out to us, you know, at least 2 weeks in advance, and we'll try and get that done. Yeah, if you want to discuss more about, I don't know, contributing committee funds to language access services, we do maintain a fund here at CEDO to help out other city departments with their language access projects, and if something comes up and they need help with, you know, providing interpreters. Yeah, I think that's something we could probably discuss further if that's the road you want to go down.
Okay. Well, again, like I said, I almost feel like it's not something that we were designing, and people can tell me if I'm wrong, but I do think with things like if elections come up, trying to making things to be things some the more accessible, I do think that might be something where this committee may be able to contribute. I do want to ask, and Scott, I don't know if you're the appropriate person to ask about this, but if we wanted to take that information and from HR and either add it onto the workings page, or I don't even know, establish another page, what might that entail? What would need for that to be done?
I think part of it is, you know, where, I mean, it's on the HR page today because that's who ostensibly is responsible for it inside the city, and it's on the HR page because of that. So I think if we were going to move it somewhere else, we would, as a city, have to say, okay, that's no longer something that falls under HR. It now falls under whoever, and we'd have to figure out who that is, and then we can move that information to another page. And I think, Vanessa, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's partly it's on that HR page because that's who's responsible for it.
Yeah, from an internal standpoint, that's true. But I think from an external perspective, it can be a both and. Like if we were to move in that direction of having another page to have that transparency, but this should still live on the HR page as well.
But that HR page is public. I mean, it is.
Correct.
Everybody here can get to that. Everybody in the city can get to that HR page.
Right.
So all that information is there, but we could, like Vanessa said, we could, you know, either link to it from another page or put information on another page, whatever the case may be, if we think it would be more appropriate or more readily found if it's hard to get to right now.
So there is a Burlington Accessibility Committee page, which is where the old agendas and whatnot lived.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it makes sense on that one page to link back to the HR page so that Vanessa can still be in charge of the information, but it is connected.
I
But I think there
do,
had been some discussion about like a centralized hub, right? So like maybe one page that links to many, many different pages. I mean, that eventually if we could build that out, like information about like traveling in Burlington as a person with a disability, or, you know, the ADA statement, or information about Oak Ledge for All. I mean, just all those pieces that somebody who specifically is looking for information related to disability inclusion in the city of Burlington might be able to go to one page. But I understand like not having all that content live on that page, but would it be possible to have one page that links to many different pages?
I do think we initially had a conversation. If you go to a lot of websites, you go on there, they have little accessibility figure, which is usually a little wheelchair that sometimes you can click. Now, sometimes that means just to make your web page more accessible, but I always thought to be a website to say tips on accessibility in Burlington. I always thought that would be very useful. I think what Scott's saying is who would oversee it, trying to figure out what that is and do that. I know Vanessa said something, and I was going to say something. I did want to say, I don't know if we're talking the same thing. I just want to make sure that if we provide a link on that page to HR link, that it might not cause some confusion, because it sounds like what's talking about is there is internal HR ADA stuff, which is Title One, but then there might be external stuff, which for municipalities would be Title II and Title III. So I would just be concerned if you had somebody from the general public clicking on that, looking in, it might be confusion. I don't know how evenly it's laid out. I mean, really, for the general public, they just need to know who the ADA coordinator is for the city of Burlington, which would cover Titles 2 and 3.
So yeah, there is a page out on the website. It is technically, it hangs under the HR page, but it's the ADA page. And it's a notice of provision of services under the Americans with Disability Act. And it's got employment, communication, policies and procedures, grievance procedures, and then who are the contacts for grievance procedures. Ethan, by the way, you're one of those contacts. So I think that is probably, like I said, that is technically part of HR. It hangs off of that page, but I think Vanessa, that's the one you were just talking about, right? Yeah.
So that would be a way to kind of share that on the okay, I'm looking
it's in the chat. Do you want me to
yeah,
repost?
I'm looking at it right now. I mean, I can certainly share it. If people want to.
But this is specifically around grievances around employment and the hiring process. Like as a city of Burlington resident, if I had a ADA related grievance, you know, like let's say I was really had a, you know, concerning experience voting, let's say. I guess that's the part that I'm not clear about.
That
where that information lives.
Technically, that's here as well.
Okay.
Because it talks about how we want people to participate equally in the city of Burlington's programs, services, and activities, including qualified sign language interpreters, documents in Braille, etc. So it's not just employees.
Okay. I guess where it's where if you scroll down to where it actually lists the ADA grievance contacts, it says Title I grievances, employment and hiring practice. Oh, I get, and then I see where it says Title II. Okay, so there's two.
Yeah, there's two.
So
we probably ought to set that off a little bit better, but yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't see that immediately.
Okay.
So that's a little hard to see, and you know, that's kind of.
I see two things. I see two things we could do. I do think that we could provide a link to this within our page, but it'll also be good for this to have a link to the committee's page, so people might know, you know, talking about some issues. You know what I mean? So it'd be good to have kind of like dual links where if somebody comes on here just thinking they have an ADA issue and they're saying that they learn, oh, there's like an accessibility committee that I get to talk to you, and then vice versa. So I could see this link being on the advisory committee's page. I just want to make sure it's it's easily accessible. I guess my issue with the HR is the fact that it's still under HR is that will people be able to, in the public, if they're looking for something, they find themselves going into HR and they're thinking, oh, well, that's an internal issue. But if it's on the advisory committee, like maybe that might make it a little bit more accessible to them.
Mhm.
I do like the idea of listing the committee there too, because I don't know, there's something, of course, that's formal language from ADA, the grievance process, but not everybody wants to go through a grievance process, right? Like sometimes people just want to provide feedback and talk more and understand more deeply. I think, I don't know, that can be I'll just say this as like a Burlington resident with a disability, like that would be a very intimidating thing for me to do, to reach out to the city, whoever's listed there for the Title II grievances. So I think I would find this committee much more approachable, likely.
Laura had a couple of really good points. I'm wondering if it should be added in parentheses what the different titles are. Title I employee, state, local for Title II, and public services for Title III. I'm really in agreement with that. I mean, I know that because I've done ADA stuff for years, and sometimes I get them confused. So I think it would be helpful for people. I do wonder. I don't want to plug us, but I don't of the bus by us. I mean VCIL, but maybe it would be helpful if opening up page if people have grievances. I get what your point about Allie about talking to this committee or even opening up to VCIL because we help people who might be filing grievances on what to do. So I definitely get the point. One of the I don't want to talk too long. I want to get my soapbox here a little bit, but one of the biggest issues with the ADA, the design of the ADA, is that there's no real enforcement of it. So what it involves is a disabled person who is a lot of times one singular person going up against big entities. It goes up against the grievances. A lot of times it's a very intimidating issue. You have people who don't have a lot of times don't have much money, not much legal knowledge, and they're supposed to be going against, big municipalities or big private businesses to file ADA complaints. So it's a lot. It's one of the biggest issues I personally have with the ADA. So I definitely see your point that maybe having some, if you have a file a grievance, here are some backup things to it. So I guess the question is, we have great ideas, but how we go about doing that? I think providing a link on both sides would be easy enough. Is that correct?
It's easy to cross-reference things, but I think you guys have a bigger conversation that we need to take internal to the city about where this page lives to resolve some of the conflicts. I mean, I think each department has a little bit that we could add even content-wise as you guys talk about like where to go to get some answers about, maybe where the accessible playground is. Not everybody knows which of the like 18 parks images to pick to find what they're looking for. Inside of DPW, I am the person that's named for the ADA transition plan. That's not well out there. So I think internal to the city between Scott, Vanessa, and a few others, we need to figure out where this page is going to live and then how to properly link off of that.
I wonder too, if there's a role for example, the Parks Commission to play, and if anyone had a grievance, I mean, besides coming to us, obviously, but we barely have any public attendance at these meetings. It would be good if, I'm not saying everybody who has a grievance or concern of ADA should go through the Park Commission, but I think it'd be a great outlet to hear concern from a board that's really open to listening and suggesting ideas, and that could work with staff on, integrating things that are specific to parks, for example. I don't know about your commission, Laura, but there are other avenues to go besides, it sounds like really formal and legal and like Nate is saying yucky to grieve something. But if there's a way for us to like work together on improving things, I think we're all open to that. Sometimes we just don't know the best answer.
And I do think that's where this committee comes in. where I think that was the issue, where some people had an issue coming to this committee where we have different people from different aspects of city government and committee members that would wear, would be person to hear it. But I definitely hear your idea. So this is we're opening up a can of worms to some complicated stuff, but I do think it's worth discussing and putting in. And I don't know if internally, I mean, I know you mentioned internally, I don't know if that's how to get that meeting happen, if that's something that you guys just declare, okay, let's have a meeting about it, if that's something that us as the committee can write a letter to the mayor's office saying, hey, can you guys have a discussion on how to do that? I know it's more work for all of you, but it's just how can we spur that on to get that conversation started?
I don't know that it has to go to the mayor's office, but I do think that this committee can say, can write a letter to staff on this committee. The idea behind Catherine and Vanessa, Laura, so all of us being on this committee is that we are city representatives for this public board or public commission. And so the commission can say to those of us at the city, here's what we'd like to see you do. And then we can go back and figure out how to make that happen. Can we make it happen? How do we implement it, et cetera? But I don't know that it has to go to the mayor.
Okay. Okay, I do think I'm looking at the agenda. I think what we're now doing bleeds into the second topic about what it takes to be a committee. And I think we're talking about some of the things. I do know that has been discussed. I knew that was brought up, was making sure we list the members of the committee. I think we already have a number of people down. We've kind of weed out. I do just want to make sure we have people who are able to attend regularly to be in the committee. I think that's something important. Definitely understand that people have things come up, but I do want to make sure that we have, people. The last thing I want is to have a listing of, kind of like what we did before, is have a listing of people on the website, and then come in and find they're not attending the meeting. And I don't know if there's, so the first thing is getting the names and getting them put up. And I think we all agreed that there would be a central email address where contact people, but at least having the people's names, those positions put on the. Can someone add that? And Laura just wrote, can someone add ASL interpretation is provided for the upcoming meetings, May 15th and June 12th on that website that Vanessa just shared. Okay. You mean to our meetings? Okay. Yeah, it'd be great to have people from the public join. So then it is, how do we go about adding? I don't know if the mayor needs to formally declare people to add on to our group website. I think we just keep circling back onto this. And when does it have to add people onto the committee, onto the website, so people know who are represented as this committee? I guess that's the first question, is what do we do? I mean, we have names. I think I have the people who regularly attended this meeting. So what's the next step for that?
I think we need to know who can edit the accessibility, the advisory committee on accessibility page.
And what about, can we just enter people in? I mean, do we need any official notification or anything?
There is a way that I think technically we're supposed to go about staffing commissions. There are several people inside the city who have the ability to change the website, but I think there is, and we would have to talk to Catherine about this potentially, but I believe there is, I believe there's a formal process around which we're supposed to go through to add people to the commission.
Okay.
Yeah, and Nate, as you consider how we organize this information, I think city email addresses are publicly available all throughout the city's website. So that's not a concern, I think, from staff side being listed. But it may just be keeping staff separate, but still available. I have no issues with my name and email address being listed as one of the contacts for Public Works if people want to reach out and have questions about streets or sidewalks or things that happen in the realm that I work within. Being the person who receives that first point of contact, or for folks to know that I'm working on this committee with everyone. I imagine, you know, there's similar representatives with our other public facilities. That would be fine, but I don't know that that helps others within the community know how to be on the committee as kind of that outside representative to be a liaison for others.
Yeah. Yeah, we need that. And I do read it, and I just do want to say that we know we roped Ally into it, and I will say that we definitely, I do think this committee could use more people from the community, because right now we have Ally and Karen Downey, and I think that's the equivalent of people from the community. And I know that's usually the most difficult part, and it's why it's so valuable to have people like Ally and Karen come in and be part of this, because it is, and even Ally is part of kind of like on part of a, you know, Vermont, you know, she's representing an organization just like me. I mean, I'm on VCIL. I'm not a Burlington resident, but I would like to be on. I like being on these committees and things like that. But it is be good to get more people from the community putting on that. So we're at about 5 more minutes left in the meeting. I think we talked about a lot of ideas. I'm just trying to think about plan of actions to do. I mean, I still don't know what we might want to do with the budget. I just don't want to run out of time before we doing that. I do think there's some, and what is the city's fiscal year? Is it September or is it June?
June 30th is our last day of
End of June. So June
July 1 is July 1 is day 1 of FY24.
Okay, that's what I was worrying. So you know, we have a few months to try to utilize something with that. And I guess the conversation would be with Ethan. Do you know how much of the budget is, or is Catherine? How much of our
That is Catherine.
Okay.
I do not know.
Okay. So we can just kind of represent. So I think that we really want to kind of think about what we could do with that. I think there are changes to the website that we can make, as in listing, you know, changing who was on it, adding links to different places, making sure the information becomes available. It's just how do we go about doing that? I think there's been some discussion. So how about this? I can reach out to Catherine and see if she has any idea how much is left in the budget, and once we get a picture of that, maybe isolate what we can spend. And I think another idea would be work on setting up this training that we could do, this open city hall in August. We can certainly look into setting that up, which is be right in the beginning of the new fiscal year. And we could certainly work on doing that and dealing with some, I lost my track of thought here, dealing with the website issues. So yeah. Hi, Ally. Thank you for coming.
I do have an idea. So thinking about interpretation type services, I'm wondering if the NPAs might be a location to target for just providing ASL or interpretation and being able to advertise those with that already automatically provided. One of those meetings that's happening right now that it's not a city council meeting, so it might be more interesting to the general public. It's neighbors talking to their neighbors about things that are happening in their very specific kind of areas around the city. But if we want to target trying to spend some money to see what can be provided and maybe who we're missing by not just having the services there, that might be a meeting group or series to offer that to.
Yeah, you know, I went and spoke to Ward ONPA 2 and 3, 2 and 3 or 3. And, that was more of a general information, telling them about the committee. And that's where Pally's point, elections was one of the election and the school board thing is what was brought up. So I will say at that meeting, the election issue was an issue that was brought up. We certainly can do that more to kind of get it more specific on those issues. Anything else? All right. Well, I don't think we have anything else to discuss. You might be getting some emails from me on some of the stuff we discussed. Just how to create some action plans on how to do it.
Ready?
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.